Hi, I'm Amanda Rivers, and I'm going to be presenting water pollution in the law. First, going over the topics. I'm going to introduce it, then define it, the history and the causes, laws and preventive laws, agencies, and then the references towards the end of the slideshow. The introduction. We need laws and regulations to protect our freshwater sources. Without them, the quality of water and the quality of life as we know it would not be attainable. Water is life. The definition that I gathered from all the sources I visited, water pollution is the introduction of some type of non-natural to natural occurring presence in said source or body of water that changes its ability to sustain life and or altering life that utilizes it. The introduction of the pollutant can be intentional and naturally occurring or due to a catastrophic event. Some types of organisms will strive on these different pollutants and cause havoc on the native animals and plant life that live in that water source, in and or around it as well. The history and causes. The history of the water pollution can be dated back to the Industrial Revolution in 1969 when the Ohio's Cuyahoga River caught fire from the dumping of chemical waste. It grabbed the attention of the nation. It made us realize damage we had been causing to our natural resources and most importantly, our water. Causes can be from intentional dumping of harmful chemicals to substances to accidental runoff or industrial accidents, but not limited to such incidents. Like when you have a wildfire and after the wildfire you have those rains washing all of that soot and everything into the rivers and everything is a natural occurring water pollutant. And there's really no preventing that. The Clean Water Act is going to be the first law that we go over. The first basis of this law was called the Federal Water Pollution Control Act in 1948. In 1972, it was rewritten by reorganizing it, and it is now what we know as the Clean Water Act. This act states that it is unlawful to disperse any contaminant through a point source, which is like a pipe or something that goes directly into the water source, into any water source that is navigable. But with a permit, you can be given through a program called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, the NPDES, to those that are of a larger entity like a paper factory but are limited still to what's covered under this Clean Water Act. They're allowed to dump part of their wastewater into a water source, but what they're dumping into that water source has to meet the levels that are acceptable to be dumped into that water source or less. They can't be more than what's acceptable. This law also regulates the quality standards of the surface water in which is considered to be safe. That's like rivers and lakes and reservoirs. Safe Drinking Water Act, the SDWA, is the next law we're going to go over. It protects our health by regulating our water supply that is used for consumption. This law was passed in 1974 and amended in 1986 and 1996. The source in which it protects is reservoirs, lakes, rivers, and groundwater wells. Private wells are not regulated unless they serve more than 25 people. A private well could be bought up by a city, and if in that case that the city would have to get that well tested by the EPA and have tests ran on it to make sure that they can use that well to serve a city in case the city is need more wells to have enough water for its people. The sources in which or national primary drinking water regulations are set with a max level where contaminants are allowed to be in our drinking water, how the water is to be treated, and how to remove such contaminants that are safe for consumption. That would be to use chlorine to sanitize it, I guess you would say. And then you have your purification mode where you would have to use like reverse osmosis and filtration devices. And then they would have to treat the water accordingly to take care of anything else. Pollution Prevention Act. Pollution prevention is finding ways to reduce the use of energy, water, and many other natural resources by helping conserve and protect such resources. So if we can cut back on water, it'll help us from, using up all of our water. And it also, the less water a company uses to be able to produce a product, the less water that they will pollute and have to put back into the ecosystem somehow, some way, and have to purify it, make it be able to be in the environment. This act states that by reducing the toxic chemicals and or reverting to less toxic, non-toxic chemicals and reusing materials, that industries will reduce the risk in which possesses the natural resources, one being our water. So this is saying that if companies could find an alternative to their chemicals that they use, that it would benefit us in the long run in our environment, because then we wouldn't be putting as much pollution into our ecosystems in our water source. The Oil Pollution Act was first a regulation in the Clean Water Act in 1973 and was known as the Oil Pollution Prevention Regulation. In this act, it describes requirements for prevention, preparedness, and response for oil discharge to prevent oil from reaching navigable waters as well as the shores and the land. It also requires facilities to develop and implement spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plans, and establish procedures, methods, and equipment requirements to clean up said spills or accidents if something were to happen. The OPA amended the Clean Water Act and required storage facilities to develop facility response plans in 1990, and on July 1st of 1994, the EPA finalized the revisions, and these revisions required that direct facility owners or operators to prepare and submit plans for responding to a worst-case discharge of oil from any holding or transferring process used for oil. That would be like train or semis on the highway, or boats in the ocean, the oil liners, and oil rigs. God forbid something like that happen. We all know the tragedy that it will cause to an ecosystem. The Environmental Protection Agency is the enforcing agency for these the pollution laws and regulations. The EPA is the agency developed and given permission by Congress to write the regulations for the laws that passed. That includes explaining the technical, operational, and legal details needed to enforce the laws and make it applicable. Regulations are the mandatory requirements that individual businesses, state or local governments, nonprofit institutions, or others must abide by or must pay a penalty and clean up their contaminants. The EPA investigates violations that are that pertain to the pollution laws. There are 4 ways that they investigate, and that is according to the degree of severity in the violation, ranking from the most severe to the least severe. The most severe, they could potentially bring criminal charges to the company or persons being questioned or in violation of. They would lead to large fines and/or prison time. For a lesser offense, but still serious, a civil suit, a demand in compliance, and may insist on fines. For an even lesser offense, someone will visit from the EPA and a legal order stating that they comply to the regulations. And then the least severe, they will send an informal letter with advice to comply to avoid further ramifications or further legal precedents. And that is it for today. And here are the references of the sites visited. Thanks and have a good day. I hope you learned something.